It's been said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Well, that may be true, but it's even truer if you forget to hold a session 0. Stick with me to find out why. Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we explore our love of geeky wisdom. We release new videos weekly, so please consider subscribing and turning on the notifications so you don't miss out on any of our content. If you're new to the channel, my name is Brian, and for me, Session 0 is the platform for everyone in the group to express what they want out of the campaign. Your campaign could work without a Session 0, but I think skipping it opens the door wider for failure. Make no mistake, as a member of a D&D group, you are in a relationship. You are building a relationship with the DM and the other players. And as with most relationships, communication is key. So set the expectations early, and you have a better chance of a successful game. And I define a successful game as one in which everyone enjoys being a part of the experience. There are a ton of ways to run a viable Session 0, but I hope you can take a few of the ideas that I have to leverage them for your own campaign. Okay, let's jump into the process. You might remember the video that we did about structuring your D&D session. I'll link it somewhere to make sure that you can find it. And I compared gaming sessions to business meetings. In the spirit of that comparison, the first thing I do is draft an agenda for the session. I've made a list of suggested categories and questions under those categories that I tend to use in each Session 0. And reviewing that list helps me prepare for a specific set of topics that we'll discuss during the session. For this video, I'll provide an overview of the categories, and then you can draft your own individual questions or topics from there. I generally use 4 categories. The first, icebreakers. Icebreakers help the group get to know one another, and there are a lot of different ways to do this, from basic Q&A sessions to mini games. Anything that will spark the engagement of the group. One quick tip, I have some flashcards that I made with all of the questions for all of the remaining things that I'm going to talk about, and you could deal these out to your players, and then they could take turns flipping them over and asking those questions to the group to get everybody involved. Another category is player favorites, and by understanding your players' favorite books, movies, and genres, and heroes and villains, you'll discover some ways to keep them engaged in the game throughout the campaign, and it also lets the other players know a little bit more about what the others at the table enjoy. The next category is hard and soft limits, and identifying them is an essential part of the session. It'll allow you as the DM to understand each player's limits in terms of content and story, but it'll also provide a safe environment to share this with the rest of the group. This should be clear for everyone, but it doesn't have to take very long in the session. It can be a pretty quick process. But this category of discussion points could take as long as needed. You just need to make sure everybody has had a chance to be heard if they want to. Sometimes these things may be difficult to discuss with other people, so one best practice is implementing a pause button rule. And during gameplay, if anyone is feeling uncomfortable, they can call for pause to stop the game. And then the final category of things is group choices. And if you saw my video about developing the theme of your campaign, you may remember that I like to provide a few campaign choices, or potential options at least, for the group. And by writing these up and sending to them ahead of time, the group can then vote on the campaign they like best. Group choices also allow us to talk through character creation. They're choosing what they want to do for their character. So I like to cover my character prologue during Session 0, but character creation in session is fine, or offline is fine. You just want them to know what to expect when you send the agenda. And once I've reviewed my list of questions relating to those 4 categories, I write up the agenda accordingly. This may seem pretty obvious, but inviting them is an essential step. If nobody can make the session, that won't be helpful. So once I have the agenda and the campaign options written up, I need to schedule the session, and I usually reach out to everyone to find out what works best for them, and after we decide on a day and a time that works for the group, then I'll send out the invite. This can be in person or online, depending on how you want to do it. I'll also send those campaign choices. Okay, here we are, running the session. And DM, this is your chance to set the stage for how you're going to run the game. May even be your chance to introduce a brand new player to D&D. No pressure. So that means it's important to follow your agenda. and hit all of the key topics that you promised to deliver on. But don't forget to include a couple other elements that may be necessary, depending on the group. Make sure you allow time for introductions and table chat. You want the group to get to know one another if they don't already, and to get reacquainted if they already do. You may have a variety of personality types, so try to engage with everyone and ensure they feel comfortable. If you have brand new players, include an overview of D&D, what's it all about, and a minimal introduction to the rules. A little information about the campaign setting may also be good, especially if it's new for everybody at the table, or at least most of the people at the table. Finally, don't forget to discuss the gaming schedule. Are you planning for a weekly game, a monthly game, every other week? What days and times work best? The group should come up with a schedule that works for everyone. And one tip is to include the average duration of your gaming session. Planning for a 2-hour gaming session is much different than planning a 4-hour gaming session, and the players need to have an idea of what they're getting into. Before closing out your session, you need to review all of the major decisions that were made by the group and clear up any confusion or miscommunication. Since the purpose of the session was to get everybody on the same page, you don't want to leave without them being on the same page. An additional follow-up can be done in person or online on a person-by-person basis to make sure that you've answered anything that needs to be answered specifically, but anything that needs to be answered as a group, take care of now. You're covering some important stuff during session 0. Don't forget to write it down. As a DM, you can refer back to this information as the campaign progresses, because you want to make sure you're including those things that they like and not including those things that they don't. But this is one case where sharing your session notes as a DM may actually be beneficial. Having a write-up that you can refer to remind yourself of all those things as a player is also great. Luckily, I recently ran a session 0 for my live stream group, so you can see how I put all this into practice or forgot things and messed it up. So check it out. In addition to the live stream sessions that we'll be playing, I'm also recording a behind-the-screens companion video for each one of the sessions. Those videos will provide some insight about how I planned for the session and adapted it as needed, again, because things will never go as planned. Thanks again for contemplating a little geek philosophy about running a session 0. In honor of this being the start of a grand adventure into the greatness of this campaign, I'd like to leave you with a few words of geek philosophy from Buzz Lightyear. To infinity and beyond!